As way of introduction, I'm Ruberto. This is me. I'm just a software engineer, period. And I think this is important because you don't need to be anybody special to work with what I'm going to be talking about now. Cool. I work for a company called Prodigy Finance, and if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't be here right now. So they believe in improving the community, making sure everyone is living their skills. All right, so we're going to be talking about Chatbots AI. Who here is going to be a bit of a participation speech, a talk. Who here has a Google account, like a Gmail? All right, very good. Who here has been on Facebook? Okay, good. You're qualified for writing AI now. Congratulations. All right, actually, this is, let me just, doing a bit of a, not that. Let's display. I think it's mirroring. Not. Aha, there it is. So I lost all my notes there for 1 second. Cool. All right, so 1950, very big, important day for all of us, because Alan Turing, who was a big name in the computer science world, right? He gave multiple different definitions of things. He did the Turing complete, so that's how computers work. And he also defined what's called the Turing Test. The Turing Test is, by definition, a test of a machine's ability to exhibit intelligent behavior equivalent to or indistinguishable from that of a human. All right. So where are we today? Well, this was last year. Very indistinguishable from. All right. All right. That's sort of where robots are coming from. So robots are not really passing the Turing test, right? But there's certain fields within computer science that are actually like jumping leaps and bounds. We're doing really great stuff, right? A big one of these is called something called NLP. So this is natural language processing. How do we communicate with computers, robots? And I'm pretty sure all of us have done that, right? If I was to go, whoops, let me turn on the sound here so you can actually hear the response. Hey Siri.
Yes.
What is 0 divided by 0?
Imagine that you have 0 cookies and you split them evenly among 0 friends. How many cookies does each person get? See, it doesn't make sense. And Cookie Monster is sad that there are no cookies. And you're sad that you have no friends.
All right. There you go. Siri telling me I have no friends. So ask silly questions, right? But that's actually very remarkable. That little transaction that we just had, how does it actually work? All right. So there's two different things that are going on underneath the covers, and I'm not going to. You don't all have to be completely geniuses at understanding what AI works. I think it's important though we know what's actually happening inside the engine, what's going on behind the scenes, right? All right. So we have natural language understanding and natural language generation. All right, and this uses something called hidden Markov models. What it does is it took my speech, what I said, hey Siri, and what it does is it cuts it down, that one little phrase that I said, into about 20 millisecond chunks, between 10 and 20 millisecond chunks, and it analyzes each chunk based on tone, how I've phrased certain words, and then from that, it sends that data to another place to process. So that wasn't my phone doing that processing. So it sent that to one of Apple's supercomputers, grabs that text, that speech, and it says, okay, what is this in text? And it breaks that up. And once it's got it into text format, it says, okay, how do I respond to this? How to respond in an interesting way, right? So Siri does this. Okay, Google does this. Amazon's Alexa does this. All right. There's a little bit of a difference, but not really, between verbal versus visual, where all that verbal does is it kind of turns it into a text. So your speech gets changed into a text. And the way it does is, as I said, breaks it up into little chunks. So each little phrase over there, it does some processing. What is this? All right. Google had a platform called AI API, which was sold eventually to Google. There's a couple of other alternatives. So from the one that we're going to be using today is called Dialogflow. This is an alternative called Wit AI. Very cool for writing your own AI. But the one that we're going to be working with is Dialogflow. But before we get into this, there's a lot of hurdles, right? There's going to be holding thumbs. I'm going to jump in. There's going to be a bit of a technical side to this. So you guys are going to all see exactly how to write your own chatbots, how to write your own AI. And it's very, very simple. But there's some hurdles that we have to understand before we get into that. All right, so some of the things that we're going to have to think about is the purpose, right? Know your audience, know who you're talking to, right? Fighting against a human nature is a losing battle, and your audience is human. So don't change your system, don't change your audience to match your system, change your system to match your audience, right? So where does AI, where does chatbots, where do they fit in? So out of all the different ways that we communicate, what are the purposes? Why do we communicate? What are the things that we need to do, right? I put them down into these, like, very brief 10 sort of things. To express a need, to share an idea, to socialize, ask questions, give instructions, reassure something, give encouragement, express feelings, share experiences, and share opinions. Now, in some instances, some of these are very good, like bots are very good to express a need, or to ask questions, or to give instructions. But, I mean, sharing an experience with a robot, you know. Hello, robot, this morning I was brushing my teeth, and, like, I forgot to put toothpaste on. Imagine that. Like, the bot's going to feel no sympathy. It's going to be like, okay, human, thank you for telling me that. All right? But it's very good when you ask questions. I need data. I need to know something. So when writing a chatbot or when writing AI, make sure that you throw it in its favor. Give it, right now, maybe in the future, we'll be able to socialize and express feelings to robots, and they'll be able to like jump back and communicate with us. But for now, let's stick within those 3 green things. All right. Emotions also very hard for computers to understand, right? And when we speak, we can give emotion. So I can say, I'm really sad today, and no one will believe me because I said it in a nice way. But if you see somebody that's sitting down and is really bummed, they will, you can almost see that. And when we text that, sometimes we text it with different emphasis. So we'll say, yay, exclamation mark, or aha, I understand something. Or you would write a word in caps to sort of like emphasize that specific word. An expression is important, right? When we communicate with each other, we want to make sure that the person that we're talking to understands how we feel emotionally. And some of the ways that we do this is using inflection. So there's many different ways that you can say something. So why did you do that? Or how did you do that? Now, this is very hard for computers to understand. Like what did he say when he said why? Did he say it like this, or did he say it like that? Right, another thing that's very hard for computers to do is something called conceptualization. And I've got 4 questions. Right? What does salt taste like? Anybody got a good answer? How does it taste? Say salt. It tastes like salt, man. What about, what does yellow look like? Right, if someone has to ask you that, what does yellow look like? You guys keep saying yellow. What does it actually look like? It's very hard to explain that. What does fresh popcorn smell like? I bet you everyone's smelling it right now. It smells great, right? You always have that like brain response happening right now. What does water feel like? These are things that are very hard for computers to understand. Right? A slightly bigger one, and this is something that we do have control over, is the culture in which we interact with our audience being human, right? And there's many different things to this. It could be our cultural upbringing, right? It could be our age, our sex, our race, our social standing. So where do you sit within the industry and socialness? This is very hard for computers to sort of fit with, because if you think about it, you'll go and socialize with people that are similar to you, right? You'll go and stand with people similar to your age, probably students if you are studying, or if you're a CEO, you're going to go and hang out with all the other CEOs because you have this common thread. All right, so this is also important when knowing how to address people. So if I was to ask everyone, if I was to ask a child, what is this? They'll say, this is a cell phone. If I ask a young teenager, young kid, what is this? They'll say, oh, that's an apple. It's got an apple sign on the back, right? Ask a like young adult, they'll say, okay, this is an iPhone and it's the 8 or whatever. They'll know more specific about it. Ask my grandfather what this is, you'll call it the devil, right? Like, never works. I always get like false calls from my grandfather. And that's really important, because now if you want to deal with these customers, you're going to need to know some of this stuff about them before you can interact with them, because you're going to interact with these people in different ways. This brings upon a lot of complexity, right? What if a user gives you data to a question that you have not asked yet? Let's look at that, right? If this was a human conversation, hey, what's your name? I'm 24 years old. What? Like, why did you say that? I asked your name, right? Sorry, I asked your name. But if you ask a bot this, right? Hi, what's your name? I'm 24 years old. It's going to say, hi, what's your name? I didn't understand what you were saying, right? It's going to repeat. It's going to want that thing. It's going to look for it. All right. And this brings us to the next thing, context. Right? We need to define what is the context within that conversation. All right. So let's look at this other example. Right? A person, how was that movie last night? Whoa, it was scary. Yeah, I heard that movie was scary. Right? You've now picked up some context from that conversation. So she didn't have to say what was going on. But if you had to put this in front of a bot, how was that movie last night? It was scary. What is scary? You know, it's like all of a sudden forgotten what you're talking about. So bots have to understand several conversations back before it can answer questions when you refer to things as it, right? Like, how was that movie last night? It, referring to that movie, it was scary. All right. Now we're going to get into some meaty bits, and then we're going to look at exactly how to jump into Dialogflow. Okay, rolling up the sleeves. Dialogflow uses two main things. One of them is called an entity. So if you look at a sentence like this, my name is Rob, I'm 29, and I'm 1.8 meters tall. There are three entities within the sentence. One of them is the name, Rob. One of them is my age, being 29. And then another one's a height. And this is represented both in a number and then in a type. Right? Name, age, height. Those are the three contexts within that one sentence. And then we're going to deal with something called intent. All right, and these are the questions we can ask to get the desired entities from a user. Right? For those that are dealing with GDPR, if you want to get personal information, right? What is your email? Where do you live? What is your favorite movie? These are questions that are going to give you data points. Let's jump into a live demo. So before I get into this, we're going to walk through just like what we need to have prepared before we get into a live demo. And I want us to all understand that there's a lot of misconceptions around AI. Some of the misconceptions being AI is hard. It is really not hard. I am just a software engineer. I have not written like crazy amounts of interesting things. I just keep code alive, right? It's not hard at all. And if I can do it, and I did this within, I don't know, I did the whole demo that we're going to see now in probably 2 days. So it's not great. It's like all the bad parts are swept underneath the rug, right? But the first thing that we need to do is define a blank page, how I'm going to interact with my user. All right, what are some of the conversations? I want us to imagine in our minds what a conversation with our user may look like. A user might come and say, hello. Oh, hi, what's your name? All right, my name is Bronwyn. Nice to meet you. Name, right? What can I do for you? I'd like to buy a board game. Great, you've come to the right place. What game are you looking for? I was hoping you had Monopoly. Get out of here, right? So you sort of write down the script of how you want to interact with your users. You kind of grab the data points that you want to carry on from context to context. And if you have that on paper, that's all you really need, right? All right, so let's jump into a couple things. Now, I hope, because this is live, and it's the first time I've done a live technical talk, that this does not like explode. Okay, awesome. So let me walk through a couple things. I hope everyone can see this. Now I'm going to need a mirror. Awesome. Great. So Dialog Flow you can get for free, right? Open source. Anybody can access it. This used to be AI API. You can just, with your Google account, everyone put up their hands, they have Gmail, you can just sign in and get it there. Now, there is a pricing model. That's if you start abusing the API. So if you want to use this for a bigger project, there will be a pricing thing. But in there's another product that I know, good friends of mine, who gave a talk very similar to this. They've abused that API. They've hit it a number of times, and they haven't even got to need to pay yet. So you get a lot of leeway. Yeah. All right. Their docs are very, very well documented. And so this is sort of what it looks like. It's like a little weird, but let's go through it. So here's our intents. Now this is what we're going to train our AI with. I've given it a whole bunch of sentences that I think, I don't know, can everyone see this? Is it very light? I see some people squinting. Right, okay, so here's our intents, right? So these are the things that I think the users will be talking to my chatbot about. Like, I was wondering if you could help me. I'm imagining that they'll give me an email address. Bill is my name. My name is Rob. Hi, hello. This is my email address. And then in here, this is where we define what things we want from within our, from those intents. Okay, let me see if I can scroll here. This is a bit of a awkward thing. And then here are prompts. Now this is where we go to define the sentences that we're going to ask our user to get those intents, right? Hi there, can I get your name? What is your name? Before we get started, can I please get your name? Right, and it says that if you give any of these things, I'm expecting a response that will carry something called name, and I want you to assign that to that value. It looks like my thing is closed, but this thing works almost immediately. Awesome. So here is a little try it out now. I don't know if this is gonna, yeah, cool. So if I say hello, right? I don't know if this will. It sounds really bad, right? But you can plug this into Alexa and a whole bunch of other things, so you can actually get nice audio back. Right? Hi there, can I get your name, please? My name is Rob. Right? Nice to meet you, Rob. Can I get your email? And if you look down here, inside of our action, this is in the sign up intent that we're looking for. It's already saved my parameter, and the value that it's assigned to it is Rob. Cool. Now the next thing it needs to get is email. So I've said within this one intent, all I want you to try get from the user is a given name and an email address. All right, so now it's going to say, nice to meet you, Rob. Could you get your email address? The perfect rule scenario is I would just give it to them, right? And there you go. It's now satisfied that intent. Now the cool thing is this little thing that we've worked with right now, it's going to go backwards and forwards to the user without us even needing to get involved. If the user gives the wrong thing or something that it doesn't think is right, it'll continue asking the question in different ways. All right, once it's got all the data that satisfies that intent, it's going to make a call. All right, so let's look. So one of the steps here is fulfillment. All right, so what I've done is I've started up a little application. I threw out this app. It's a little shop called Lonely Mountain Gaming, and it sells board games, right? And there's a couple of board games. You can go into the board game. You can see how much it costs. And then what I've done is I've set up a web page on Facebook called Lonely Mountain Gaming. And I've connected this dialog flow little model thing that I've built. I've integrated it with Facebook chat. Now all of this is completely and 100% documented on their thing. Here it is, right over here. You go to integrations under the documentation, Facebook Messenger, they do Slack, they do Kik, they do Skype, they do Spark, they do Telegram, they do hundreds of things, and they're adding more things, right? So this is very cool. You can plug into whatever you want. All right, so I plugged into this page, and if I was to go to my page and say test button, now, as you can see, I've been talking to my bot a little. All right, hello. And now it's chatting back. How cool is that, right? Hi there, what's your name? What happens if I give him my email address before I give him my name? Right? Interesting. It's gonna save that and send me. Okay, so this was actually my application firing in the background. So I've got something. I've got my app running, and it's broadcasting on Ingrok, and that call fulfilled to my Rails app, and my Rails app has now created a user for that person, just based off the email address. Imagine that. How crazy is that, right? So we can build onboarding flows completely via chat. And that's like naturally how people communicate nowadays, right? You can have like a little thing on your Facebook, type in, oh, you want to create an account with us? Cool, just give us some information. Here you go. And you don't even have to get involved. That means that when you're sleeping and you have like 30 people abusing your site and you can't respond, you have a little thing that's doing that for you, right? So the possibilities for this, it's very, very cool. Right? In fact, so there you go, it signed up a little account for me in the background. It says, welcome to Lonely Mountain Gaming, Rob. How can we help you today? Now this is where it gets a little bit rocky, guys, because I haven't really tested this, and I wrote this last night when there was no internet. So let's see if this works. I'm looking for a board game. Oh, back at you. Wait, okay, let me just see. Now this is where it starts disconnecting. Have you ever been ever had a chat with a bot and then you knew it was a bot and you felt immediately offended? Like, I can't believe they put me with the bot. So that's some of the things that you don't want to get involved. So here's my board game inquiry, right? And I've named a whole bunch of different board games. And if you look here, I've actually defined my own type. So I've got something called board game, and it's actually grabbed it from this entity. Let me just show you what that looks like quick. So you can define entities over here. So I've got one called board games. And then inside here, I define all the board games that I like. And then these are aliases that maybe people may talk about, right? And it knows that when it's looking for one of these games, if somebody just says 5 Tribes lowercase, it knows it's that. Or if you mention like Roll for the Galaxies RFTG, I don't know if anybody would do that, but it would sort of pick it up. So if I was to say, I am looking for concept, see what it says. Oh, my phone's going off, it's saying someone's chatting with me. Let me just double check that everything's, oh, there you go, there's the error. Anyways, let me just show you what this looks like. So this is the parameters that I get back from Dialogflow. Now if we look at Rails console, let's look at this a little bit, because it's going to show us some really cool stuff right now. This is the second response that I've sort of sent through. It would have been cool. Let me just paste that. And we can see several things here. In fact, I'm going to assign it to something quick. And then keys. We're going to see what the 4 different things that it's going to send. One of them is a query result, and then there's session, Dialogflow, some other data. But the one that we're going to be looking at is this. Right. Let's see what's inside here. hope everyone can see this. Can everyone see? Is it too small? Let me make it a little bit bigger. All right, so here you can see the query text is I'm looking for concept, right? Inside the parameters, it's got board games saved as concept, and it's suggesting that what the user may be looking for is a price, which is very cool. So I started to figure this out. And then what it does is it gives you the intent that it's grabbed it from. And then this over here is its confidence. How confident is it that what you're actually asking for is the thing that you're looking for? And it's more than confident. It's 80.8. So 1 in this instance is 100%. All right, you'll see some other things. Now this is very cool, right? Check here. These output contexts, these are all the conversations that I've had with it, and it's keeping information about me as a user. So it will start storing the given name, the price, the board games I've been talking about, my given name, my email address. It sort of figures stuff out. And then it saves that. And you can define how long you want that context to be for. So you can say, I want it to be 5 generations big. So for 5 different interactions, 5 different intents, things that it's going to grab, it's going to store all of that data, and then you can refer back to it. So when you respond to the user, you can say, oh, I remember you said concept 3 sentences ago. Are you sure you don't want that game? Right? And then it gives it back to you. So Dialogflow has done a lot of heavy lifting that we don't need to do. We don't need to like cut up the little words, figure out what the user's trying to do, send it all the way back to the server, figure out what's going on, respond to our user. All we have to do right now is define like conversations. What sort of conversation do you want to have with your user? And what sort of data am I expecting back from that user? And if I get that data, okay, what am I going to do with it? Let's look. Right? So inside my app, let's look inside my Rails app. Right? All I've done is in the Dialogflow, I just built in a single endpoint that my fulfillment will go to, and very slim, cool-looking controller. It's going to go online, and that's because I stuck everything in this chat service, which does not look as cool. But pretty much I'm saying, okay, if it's a sign-up intent, I want you to respond it with this, and if it's a board game query, then I want you to respond it with a different way. And the board game query one, and this one here is where it broke. But pretty much all it does inside here, you can just respond with this sort of data, and this knows that it's talking to Facebook, but you can also cater inside here for all the different types. So if you want to have one chatbot to rule them all, right? You can have one chatbot that responds to Facebook, Slack, Telegram, all of them. It knows how to integrate with each of these, and then in your Rails app, you can just say, if somebody's coming to me via Slack, respond with this Slack response. If someone's coming to me with Facebook, respond with this sort of Facebook response. All right, and this is Facebook's little, I don't know, their templates that you can get. Let me just show you those quick. So you can go to the Facebook. If you've got a Facebook account, guess what? You have free Facebook for developers account as well. So you can sign up here, and then they give you tons of different like attachments. So the board game one that I built looks like that, and it shows you a little board game, and you can purchase it. How cool is that? So you can actually build your whole flow in a chat sort of context. All right. So all you have to do is just go down here. Okay, this is what I want. You copy that, you paste it in. Bob's your uncle, you have something that can serve. All right, and then here it comes very interesting because now you have context, right? You can say, find this game's details. Is this game available? If it is, respond like this. If it isn't, respond like that. If this user is over the age of 80, respond like this. If the user is under the age of 5, respond like that. So you can build up different ways that you can communicate with the user. So all those hurdles that you saw before are very easily taken care of by you. You can build a custom onboarding process for all types of users across all the spectrums using something that's for free. Very cool. So yeah, this is what I've learned. I've been playing around with it. We're actually going to be building this into our main app fairly soon. So we have 2 hackathons a year, and one of the hackathons was let's build an onboarding process using a chatbot, and it won. And we have this thing that if you have a winning hackathon idea, we're going to implement it. So very soon, we're going to have a whole onboarding process for our application written in Dialogflow. So it's very exciting. So it's very cool to see something that was like a hobby become something that's going to be used in the real world. So give it a try. Everyone that has a Google account, you have no excuse. It's free, it's very easy, it's lightweight, you can play around with it. It's very cool. All right, any questions? I don't know if I have time for questions. Okay, cool. Question? Yes, absolutely. So between, let's say the chatbot's interacting between Facebook and Dialogflow, and it will continue going backwards and forwards until it satisfies its intent. It will then pass that off to you and say, here's good data. Do with it what you will. And as you can see in here, I think in my user one, I grabbed the email address from the parameters and I got the given name and I set up a user. So I was able to save that data. So everything that you saw in that big blob, you go there quick, everything inside here, you can actually then take that and put it into your database. You can record every conversation that a user's had pretty much. Cool. Let me see, there's one more. So that bot that you saw in the beginning failing, this was this year. So it's definitely improved. So very soon we will have robots that can not only somersault better than I can, but communicate better than I can, I'm pretty sure. All right, so this is me, Legendary Rob. You can catch me at legend_Rob on Twitter. On GitLab, I'm on GitHub, big fan of both. And this is Prodigy Finance, the guys that sponsored me. We do loans for people that want to study overseas. So yeah, that's it.